Hey guys, David the Fishin Pastor here, and I want to give you 5 tips in 5 minutes for how to avoid bird's nests and backlashes on your bait casters. So for tip number 1, I want to talk about the spool tension knob, and it's really important that you calibrate this with each and every lure that you tie onto your rod and reel, because each and every lure weighs differently. And if you're new to bait casting, what I really recommend is turning that tension knob all the way up so that when you hit your release, nothing happens, your spool stays in place. Now what you want to do is gradually back it off until that lure just starts to fall. And what you want is for that lure to hit the water and your spool to stop spinning. What causes backlashes and bird's nests is when your lure hits the water and your spool continues to spin. That causes the bird's nest. So tip number 2 goes hand in hand with tip number 1, and it's learning to work with your brakes. And what you want is a reel with some really good brakes on it, like this KastKing White Max here. And again, if you're new to bait cast reels, I really recommend turning your brakes really high, if not all the way up, just until you get used to it and you get comfortable. Then you can start working with those brakes. But there's a few things that factor into using your brakes, whether you're casting into the wind, with the wind, whether you're trying to make long casts or short casts and flips, things like that. All that factors into it. But again, if you're new to this and you're getting those bird's nests and those backlashes, I recommend turning your brakes up just until you get comfortable with it. Tip number 3 is called feathering, and it's really important that each angler learns how to do this. Even though my KastKing White Max reel is a great reel with some really good brakes on it and a spool tension knob that'll control everything, if I want full control over my cast, I'm going to feather, and that's just using my thumb to apply tension to the spool. This will help you determine how much line goes out at what speed, and it can even help you stop a bad cast in the moment. If you're casting into some trees or some reeds or just somewhere you don't want it to go, you can apply full tension onto that spool and that'll stop it. This gives you absolute control over each and every cast. So for tip number 4, we actually have to go backwards a little bit, and I apologize for that, but even before dealing with the brakes and the tension knob and feathering or any of that, is just choosing the right kind of line for the right application that you're fishing. Another really big important thing is knowing which size line to use for your spool. If your spool is rated for 12-pound diameter line and you're using 20 to 25 pound, that can be contributing to some bird's nests and some backlashes. So know what kind of line and the diameter line, because it's really important. Also, just knowing the application. If you're going to be flipping into some heavy cover, maybe you want to be using some braid, or if you're fishing crankbaits, some fluorocarbon. Also, if you're kind of newer to this and you're not really familiar with fluorocarbon line, things like that, using a really good copolymer line like KastKing's copolymer can really help. Something with low memory, so that you're not dealing with that, because what can happen is, again, you have high memory lines, they're used to a certain size spool, and you're spooling them onto something else that's a lot smaller, and that can also contribute to those backlashes and those bird's nests. So again, some low memory line, some really good braided line like KastKing Superpower braided line, really great. It's really my favorite braided line out there. Or like I said, some copolymer line with some low memory is a great place to start. So again, choosing the right line for the right application, for the right size spool that you have, is really important. So for tip number 5, the last tip for how to avoid backlashes and bird's nests, you may think that this is a little bit dumb, and I promise you it's not. It's actually really helpful. But if you're using a type of line with more memory, like a fluorocarbon line, or even a monofilament sometimes, what I really recommend doing is, after you have spooled up your reel with new line, is just running it under some warm water. And that will help release some of the memory that is on that line. Now, again, it may seem kind of dumb, may seem kind of simple, but honestly what you're doing is you're taking line that from the manufacturer has been on a spool about that big, and you're putting it on a spool that's about that big. So, it already has that memory, it's already used to being on that size. So if you just, again, after you're spooling it up, after you're done, just run it under some warm water, not some really hot water, but just some warm water. It'll release some of that memory, and it'll kind of grip better to your spool, and that'll help you avoid backlashes and bird's nests. Okay, so there you go. There are 5 simple tips to help you avoid getting bird's nests and backlashes. Hopefully these help you out. I know how frustrating it could be to be new to having a bait caster and be making those casts, and you're excited about it, but you're kind of unsure about it because it's new to you, and you're having to pull out that line and you're having to untangle that line, and it can be just really frustrating and annoying, and I totally understand that. But hopefully if you just apply these 5 simple techniques, they'll help you out, and you know, pretty soon you'll find yourself being a master at using a bait caster. I love using my bait casters. I like my spinning reels, but I really love my bait casters. But again, hopefully this helps you. If you're interested in any of the products that were used in this video, the White Max or the Speed Demon reel, or even the braided line or the copolymer line, I'm going to link that in the description below. But again, thanks for watching. Remember to pray, fish, repeat. God bless. I'll see you in my next video.